Hi. So today the video is about MedTracker, which is a startup that I did with a couple of friends that lasted 6 months, and it was a medical system focused for both doctors and their patients. And in this video, I want to talk. Well, first, I want to say a quick background about this startup, then talk about the main obstacles, and also let's say, the good things I think that I did during this experience. And at the end, I also want to talk about the main takeaways about all this situation. So, a quick background about my tracker is that, well, first, the reason that I wanted to do a startup was because since then, so I did this startup in January June, I think, of 2024. So I took 6 months from school to focus 100% on this startup. And I did this because since then, currently, I know that after college or in the future, in the short term future, I want to do a startup, hopefully a successful startup, hopefully. But yeah, in my mind, I thought that it was going to be very important that if I wanted to start something in the future, I needed to get this experience on building a product, launching it, trying to get some users on the marketing, developing new features and stuff like that. So I thought that was going to be a very important experience. So in the future, I could successfully start a company. Uh, yeah, however, it's important to mention that at that time I thought that I was going to have a successful startup right at that time. But in general, yeah, I thought that it was going to be very important to have uh, this experience. So, how this idea came from? First, in my school, we have that our classes in a semester, we usually learn, for example, a new framework, a new programming language, and at the same time, we receive clients, companies, or let's say users in which they want product to be built for them. And our task is for us to apply what we learned in class to build a product that the clients or the company that came uh, want, right? So in this semester, we received this doctor that he treats many diseases that have, let's say, subjective symptoms or symptoms that are that depend person by person. So, an example, I think it's diabetes, in which some patients can have symptoms of, let's say, insomnia, or other patients can have symptoms of anxiety, right? And the purpose or the product that he wanted was a note taking app, which the users or the patients could create their own symptoms in a quantitative way so they could share easily to the doctor these symptoms or how they were feeling each day, so they could easily track the symptoms and if the medical treatments were working or not, and how in general the patients were feeling, right? So it's very similar to the mobile application that Apple already has, or most phones have. But what he wanted was for this data to be easily shareable, right? So I took 6 months from my school because I wanted to focus 100% on this idea. And I was working with three other people and also with the doctor, in which we were seeing each other every week. So about the main mistakes, I think that we as a team leader, I did of about having the initiative was first, I think, a mistake, or let's say area of improvement. It was the team and equity. So I was the only person focusing full time on the application, and I think there was only one guy more that he was also like very interested on releasing the mobile app that we did to the app store, and also building the web dashboard for the doctors to see the data that the patients wanted to share with the doctors. So Yeah, it was that, and I think that it was also very difficult, I think, for me to properly motivate the persons to work because everyone was with the school and they had other focuses. And I also think that if I remember correctly, also there was one or two people that just uh, would focus on this startup for only 6 months, and they were going to, I think, do an exchange program, if I remember correctly, so they couldn't focus long term on this. So that was a problem because I thought that to properly motivate people, I think equity is useful in that regard. So from the videos that I saw and the books that I read, I thought that equity was, let's say, this tool to uh, all the team to keep working. And yeah, because not everyone was working 100%, I thought that it was not just to give equity, because not everyone was going to work on that full time, and they were only going to work in the short term. And there were some awkward Zoom calls or some awkward meetings to try and, let's say, uh, split how that was going to work. And it was also very funny because we didn't have any users, any traction. And I think that we didn't saw we didn't saw from anywhere any interest in what we were doing, but we were trying to make the split. And I thought that it was important, uh, because I was the only one pushing it, but I was, my mind is well, like, okay, if even if this work, I think that it's important to establish how the remuneration was going to work, even if that works at that time that we didn't have anything. Because once something starts working, even if like that's very difficult, right? But even if in the remote case that it starts working, uh it's more difficult, right? But yeah, it was very awkward, and the team, like, it's not their fault because they had other things to work on. But I think that the team from the start wasn't the best to try and build something people want. And I later learned about vesting, which I think it's very useful, in which you establish the equity that everyone will receive, and they will receive the equity in a 4 year period, and they will receive, let's say, a quarter of the equity that was decided. They will only receive after 1 year of working in the startup. So if you drop after 6 months, then you will not receive anything. And after the first year, you will receive a percentage of the equity every month. So I think that's very clever, and that makes sense to split the equity, to give the equity to all the team members. So yeah, that was one thing. The team, I think it was not the most uh, it wasn't optimized to make this setup, because I think that in the end we were only two people that were interested in trying to release everything. But yeah, that was one thing. Then the second mistake with I think we did was that we were not the user, and I have seen this again and again in YC videos. Because in YouTube, for example, throughout this period, I read essays from Paul Graham. I also saw videos in YouTube about Paul Graham, Y Combinator, which I think they have very good resources. And not being the user had the problem because it was very difficult to evaluate if the app was even if it makes sense, or if the features that we wanted to build were useful or not, because the system that we wanted to build was for doctors and for patients, and we weren't either doctors neither patients, right? So that was the problem. We couldn't evaluate if this was useful or not. And I think we got it right that we had at least a doctor that was giving his opinion. But we not being the users and only seeing the doctor once a week, I think it made a very slow feedback loop on uh, getting the comments of the application and its usefulness. So I think that was another mistake. uh, But on the good side, on this part of not being the users, also think that I learned a lot about how to talk with customers. So I saw this book, which is called The Mom's Test, where an XYZ person that attended Y Combinator read. And it's a very small book, very practical. I really like it, in which he talks about how to talk with users. And I found it very useful because talking to users, getting useful feedback is sort of like an art because you can be very easily misguided, or the user can you you need to be very conscious in order to gain useful information from the customer or the user that you're talking to. So I found this very useful because for 1 month and a half I attended many hospitals and many I have some meetings with many doctors in which I presented the system and tried to gain useful feedback about them. And reading this book, reading the very practical advice that the book had, I found it very useful to talk with customers. Um, so yeah, that was for the and also the third mistake that we had was that we took too long during the development, because we developed the system for 3.5 months, almost four. And I think that's too much for doing just a demo. We had many ideas about the features of improving the security, and I think that we got the mentality right at the end of this month, because I thought that it was only a demo and we didn't have any traction, and we didn't have any we didn't saw I didn't saw any interest from other people. So I told the team like, hey, we need to stop developing, we need to stop doing features, stop everything, and just try and show the idea to other people to see if there is any interest, right? And after month and a half of doing that, I found that there wasn't any interested. And maybe not that the idea was bad, but I think that we weren't the right team to build this system. But yeah, I think that the third mistake was that we took a lot of time developing. I think that the application, a very basic demo, could have been built in 2 weeks, even less, enough just to show something to other people. And yeah, I think that was the third mistake. It should have been faster, and we should have seek more feedback from the users early on, instead of doing it 4 months after the developing. Now, for the good things that we did, first, I think that it was good that at least we had the doctor working with us. So the one that had the initial idea, we were seeing each other every week to gather feedback, to gather his opinion, to learn more about the problem, about what he wanted. So I think that was it was useful. I think it would have been better if we have been the users, or if we had more doctors, right? Because only having one doctor is not representative, or it doesn't assure us that the problem really exists, or if it's only on his mind. But I think that that was better uh, than nothing. And again, I think that I already mentioned it, but another good thing that we did was that after the 3 months and a half of developing, and think after I watched like a lot of videos and reading a lot of essays about Paul Graham, I thought that it was time to just release it and just seek more uh, of searching for more doctors, more hospital to try and gather opinions. And we stopped everything about developing new features, about a lot of important stuff about security. That was also very important. But in that moment, we saw that like we already have a good demo, and it was time to start gathering opinions from the users and from other people. And again, after more than a half of doing that, we found that there was no interest, and it was like difficult to gather users. So yeah, I think that that was also like a very good mentality of just trying to see if there is any remotely interest about of any person on using the product that we had. And in the end, we found that there wasn't any, I think. So yeah, I think that mentality was very good on just trying to see if anyone just wants it. And from this, I think my main takeaway was that at the start, I thought that getting the experience was really important. But I remember that watching this recording from Paul Graham, I think it's named before this startup, in which he explains that the main thing of building a startup is not to learn the emotions of doing a startup, but on the customer, on the user, on the product, on the problem that you're trying to solve. Because, for example, companies like Meta, Facebook, Google, what else? Microsoft, Apple, they weren't experts on building a company, but they had a real good product. So I think that it's orders of magnitude better on just focusing on creating a good product than learning the motions of starting a startup, in which execution is important, right? Execution is important, but I thought that at that time I didn't have the domain knowledge of having uh, the technology, the enough technological knowledge to start a startup. Because what he mentioned in one of his essays, Paul Graham, was that you need to become good at some technology. And in my mind, I didn't saw me as someone that knows or is good at one technology. Uh, but yeah, I thought that after the experience, I thought it was very important to just become good at some technology in order after that to start a startup. Because from what I learned, my main takeaway, I would say that there are two type of businesses. One where the technology side, uh, it's not that difficult part of a business, but the other stuff, the execution, it's much more important. And an example is, let's say, a mobile application for some clubs or bars, so, for parties, where it's very easy to make a mobile application. I think that everyone can do it, or everyone can learn it. It's not that difficult, but the execution part on how you get the different clubs, the different, let's say, restaurants, on how you make the incentives to attract people, stuff like that, it's what it matters the most. And then in contrast, there are other businesses, for example, nuclear fusion, that the technology it's much more important. That once you do it, or quantum computing, for example, once you do it, uh like, yeah, you need to have sort of like an execution, but the difficult part is much more the technology side. And from seeing that framework of those type of businesses, I think that I want to focus more on the middle side, or tilted towards the technology part of things, because I think that I really like technology, and I really want to become good at some technology. For example, autonomous systems is one that I'm attracted to, and I think that becoming good, you require some preparation to do that, and I think that also raises the barrier to entry. You have a higher barrier to entry, and I think that's better, because with software as a services, with SaaS, with mobile applications, stuff like that, I think the barrier to entry it's low, and I also want to focus on one that it's higher. So to focus more on the technology side of things, that you need more preparation. I think it's for me, for my person, I think it will be easier than focusing on the other type of businesses. So yeah, since then I've been with the mentality of taking new courses on exploring the different technologies that exists. So for example, I've taken courses on cybersecurity, on machine learning, uh, on operating systems. So in a wide range of skills, and I think that that's been viable on learning the new technologies, because in the end, I think that I want to focus on one good technology, on one specific technology, on become good on that one, on being niche, and then starting a company from there. Because from the companies that I have seen, for example, Microsoft, Apple, or Google, like, At that time, it was very difficult to start that type of company. You needed a domain expertise, a technology expertise. For example, Microsoft, Bill Gates had a lot of experience programming, which was very new back then. From Google, they were doing their PhD on the search engine. On Apple, they had Steve Wozniak, which was a very knowledgeable person on microcomputers, I think. So yeah, all that people were had that technology expertise. And I think that you can start companies if you have that technology expertise. And that's the company that I want to start on. And that's like the pathway that I want to focus on. So uh, it's been, I think, 2 months, but I took the decision that I want to focus first on autonomous systems. So, for example, drones on cars. I think that uh, there's opportunities to start something in there. So I want to take that focus on probably in the future after gaining this technology expertise that I'm telling that requires, a couple of months, years, even. I think that I want to start a company. So I think that was my main takeaway from all this experience, in which the type of businesses that exist in my mind, this framework that I think I learned, and just on exploring the different technologies that exist and just choosing one to really focus on and then to become good, so you can also see like in the future how this technology can evolve and then start a company that does that. So that's been like my main focus, and that was my main takeaway. And I think that's everything from this video.